Greetings and good day. This is Donnie with Tech Winter, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, guys, I wanted to give you a little bit of a different setup today, but give you a deep dive into a video I did earlier this year where I'd set up an iPad on the wall, mounted it to the wall, where it has a whole bunch of controls and a dashboard for all things smart home in my house. I alluded to it in there that I'm using a solution called Home Assistant for that. And today I want to give you a deep dive into how I went about building that dashboard, walk you through some of my thought process from a design perspective and a usability perspective as well. So this is a little bit more of an advanced tutorial of some of the things that I went through. If you have any questions, drop those in the comments. I'll do the best I can to respond to as much as I possibly can there. But we'll dive right in and look at a test version of the dashboard that I have built out. I've removed some things that are a little bit more personal in like location and that kind of stuff from here. So thank you for respecting that. I will point out the way that Chrome renders some of this versus the way that my iPad renders it is slightly different, but it's close to what that product looked like. I'll put in the thumbnail just a picture of what that dashboard looked like. But there are a couple things I'll point out that are just odd and strange. And I've also just posted this, or I've created this template that is like based on a very specific color scheme. That is like the color scheme of our house. I actually went and got the hex numbers of the Sherwin-Williams paint and used that scheme to be able to put together this dashboard. But essentially the look and feel of the iPad itself, you're not seeing all of this stuff on the side. I'm going to keep this column the way that it's there, but you would only be seeing everything from like the home controls over is all you're seeing. Basically these three columns of information or buttons or controls. So down here I also have a clock that is a web. It's loading a web page. It's basically a widget from a website called Dayspedia, and you can build out widgets there. I've kind of just showed a link to where if you just go to dayspedia.com, I'll put that link in the description if that's something you want to do. But I liked the customization this gave me. I like the information you could get from it, and you could do totally custom colors to match. So I've built out one that's got a really long URL that then I've embedded into basically loading this little web page on Dayspedia. So it's a nice free feature that they've built, and I've just taken advantage of that for building that out. And the other thing about this, and I've tried to scale this to exactly what the iPad would be seeing, but as you can see, these three columns are all the same length, and that is really hard to do when you're talking about a Lovelace dashboard inside of Home Assistant. It's not intuitive to be able to do that easily. So the way that I've kind of hacked that together is I've got these URLs that basically these web page cards that are basically have custom aspect ratios, and those custom aspect ratios then allow me to at least adjust the size of these specific cards. So in Home Assistant, everything is called a card, and all of these different cards have certain sizes, and this is about the only one that you can customize that card size, at least easily. So I have one here. This one in my production is like a QR code that is just a JPEG image that I have in Google Drive that then is just a Google link, and it's calling that Google image and it's putting it into that little box. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm not showing you that because it's also credentials for my personal SSID here at home. So no offense, I just don't feel like I ought to share that with the whole world. And then I needed one little spacer in this third column to be able to fit that scale just right over here. So there's just another, again, a URL that's pulling up another Dayspedia widget that I have completely blanked out that's just that gray background color. So that's a good opportunity for me to mention there's all these different themes that Home Assistant has. And for this, I'm using a theme called Noctis Grey. And then I've modified some of the colors to match some of those hex colors that Sherwin-Williams was calling out, as far as like the primary color of like our walls and then an accent color off of that. So our walls are kind of that grayish. I think it's Worldly Gray is the actual color that Sherwin-Williams has. And then there was another accent color that I'm blanking on what that is, but just wanted to match those two colors. So basically from there, you look at the layout here, and these are three distinct columns that I've put in place here, and I've labeled them. So have some lighting control here, and then there's clock and weather information down here. The other reason I went with a third-party clock here, at least at the time when I was building this out, I, I like AM and PM, and the built-in Home Assistant clocks just weren't providing that for me. So I wanted to have a way to have AM PM, and Dayspedia was a nice shortcut to make that happen, along with me being able to scale that to perfectly fit these 3 columns aligned with a nice symmetrical look on the iPad. And just keep in mind, every screen is different, and I made this custom to fit the look and feel of an iPad 10.5 inch display. If I were to do this on a different display, it would need to look different. I tested this on an iPad Pro, and it had to look different. The scaling had to be slightly different based on that screen resolution. So depending on how much attention to detail you want to have, how much customization you want to have, to me, those web page cards are your best friend. So kind of that second column, I've been a Ring customer for many years. I wanted to have the integration there. So I like that I was able to get Ring Alarm to work. And I'll just kind of demo, hopefully, what'll happen. The way that I have this set, there is a code that then I can put in to arm or disarm. So if I arm this, what's going to happen is it's going to populate a keypad onto my screen, but otherwise it's not there. So as you can see, I've now done that and the keypad's there. If I hit disarm, which I'm just going to do from the Ring app on my phone, it does put it to where that keypad disappears again. And then I've got 6 cameras that are here in the middle of the screen, as you can see. And then I've got some other lighting controls as far as like lights that are, these are actually Ring specific. Backyard lights is the name of that zone. And then landscape lights in the front, which I have connected to a TP-Link Casa outdoor smart switch, which is also integrated here. By the way, everything in this column here is Lutron Caseta, smart switches, or some sort of smart dimmer control that I have integrated through Lutron Caseta, but that's what's talking to all of these different lights here. There's some other things, some layers to that, where I've got some LifeX bulbs that are also integrated, and I've got some routines that are built in through Home Assistant that if Lutron Caseta has a action, it triggers then the the LifeX bulbs to turn on, turn off, match dimming controls. But that's even more advanced than us talking about this dashboard. So I'm not going to park there for very long. Over here in this third column, you see I've got climate controls, and these are Ecobee thermostats that I have in my house. So I've got a downstairs thermostat, I've got an upstairs one. I also have some smart sensors that you're not seeing in this specific dashboard, but I've got some other ones that are built out that show some reporting there as well. And then I've got 2 garage doors, and as you can see, they are currently unavailable. This is because MyQ has turned off API access for third-party solutions like Home Assistant, which is making me very sad. I have ordered Moras. I reached out to them and said, hey, I'd love to do a video for you guys, and they're going to send me their smart garage door product. So I will be testing that out. I've seen some other really great results that people have had, people in the Home Assistant community, which has no cloud dependency, you guys. Also integrates with HomeKit, which means with Apple devices, Apple products, even with Apple CarPlay, I can have a button there to be able to open and close garage doors. So that's going to be coming very soon. I'll be doing a video specifically about that, but it makes me sad that right now these are basically unavailable, and that's because MyQ has closed the window on that. Kind of bad guy MyQ as far as if you want to be an advanced user like this to not have that access. I would say for the majority of people, MyQ is still a great solution. It works with an app, easy peasy. You've got some shared things you can do there as far as giving delegated access to somebody, and then the Amazon Key solution to be able to have a delivery person then put a package inside of your garage, having access to be able to do that. Super handy and something that is totally supported by MyQ. So still a reasonable solution. This is a smart front door that I have. This is just a Z-Wave lock by Ultralock. I did a video about it last year. I have it integrated through Ring Alarm, but I've got access to be able to do controls there. This is our smart vacuum. It is a D-Bot. Blanking on, I think it's a T5 is the model that we have. But she's sitting there. You can also control her from here, so I like that. And then I've got just some weather cards here. One that's just alive, and then one that's got like a 5-day forecast as well. So just to kind of go in and talk about how we went about this. So for me, we talked about themes is one of those first things. This one, Noctis Grey, was the basis for this. You're going to get access to lots of different entities and integrations, which are some of the terminology that Home Assistant uses. But for this, I did go through hacks to be able to get that Noctis Grey. I have not updated it because it does reset some of the custom coding that I've done in the YAML code to change some of those color values to have them completely customized. But this is where I went to get that integration. And there's some great links on Home Assistant's website to be able to get to this kind of stuff as well. But there's some other ones too. There's a Noctis. It's just called Noctis, but it's more of like a blue theme, which I really like it as well. I appreciate like it puts like nice little shading around each one of these cards. So I just like that detail. So that was one of the reasons why I went with this one. But there's also in hacks one thing that I would point out to you that you would definitely want, and that's mushroom. So mushroom is a specific look and design for cards, which I've used quite a bit here. And we'll go ahead and go into the edit just to kind of show you some of these different cards. So each one of these columns is what's called a vertical stack integration. So these are 3 separate vertical stacks that I've put together. So if you get down here and I go to the bottom, you see these edit buttons. These are for these 3 columns that I've built out. 3 separate things, basically as the foundation, 3 separate vertical stacks that then just populate side by side when you have a screen that has its aspect ratio and resolution similar to that iPad 10.5-inch Pro that I have on the wall. And then you have basically these different entities that are inside of these fun little things. So as you can see here, I've got basically this card at the top that is, all it is a title card, and it is lights. That's all it says. And then I've got all these different ones underneath it that are these different different light cards. So if I were to want to add a different one, I would just go to like lights, and there's the default one that comes with. I didn't like it so much, but there's a mushroom light card, and then you can also add some fader controls to it. So we're not going to be doing that, so we'll end up canceling here in just a minute. But as you can see, there's like a light icon. The default color I've put to kind of this different reddish color kind of that I've made, which is kind of custom too, because it's a little closer to like a 2700K, which is kind of where I like to have my lights. But you can have the brightness control. If you were to turn off the brightness control, I'll show you that turned it off for the foyer, which is the one that we're on right now. I brought that brightness control back. Fun stuff. So like my office right now, I've got it dimmed, and see how the lights got darker behind me because I'm in my office right now. We can control all of that in real time, and we can put that brightness all the way up to 100%. I'll put it back there around that 50% mark. But all that's happening in real time, just that fader control. I like having that with anything that's dimmable. So I've built out a whole stack of these. So foyer main lights, these are all entities that Lutron has integrated here. So just to kind of show you what that integration stuff looks like, it might be helpful for you guys to see. I'm going to scroll back down to settings, and we can look at integrations. So a whole bunch of different stuff that's been integrated here. As you can see, the Lutron is one that I definitely wanted to point out to you guys. So you can see Lutron Caseta here. All these different devices, it just picks up. So Home Assistant is very intuitive. If there's things that are on the same network as it, it's going to find those things, and it's going to be able to integrate them quickly. So one thing I'll point out here, there's no cloud dependency for this one. There are some other ones where there are. So Ecobee would be one where it highlights here and says this is dependent on the cloud to be able to work. I'm trying to get away from that as much as possible. That's where MyQ really bit me, because as soon as they turn off their APIs for this stuff or throttle it, it stops working. So I'm now in more of a mindset of avoiding things that are dependent on the cloud. Because again, what is the cloud? It's somebody else's computer. And as long as it's on somebody else's computer, you're really dependent on them to deliver for you. So kind of going back to this, that's what that first column is. It's pretty basic, and you just add different cards to it. And when you add those cards, it populates them into that vertical stack. The second card is a little bit more complex, so we'll spend some more time looking at some of the details there. That first title card just says security on it, and I recognize the way that I have this right here is a little bit tricky to be able to read through because of just the theme that I have in place here. It makes a lot of sense when you're on the iPad. So just maybe for the sake of simplicity here, it might be best for me to just make that change real quick to a theme that's a little bit easier to read. So bear with me here for just a second while I go back in and make that change for us. All right, we're going to change that back to the default theme just to make things a little bit easier to read. All right, so, all right, back into this. This will make it a little bit easier here. So again, on the iPad, you want it to be the same theme so that you don't end up with this weird like title or sidebar that is totally clashing. But for the sake of this demonstration, I think it'll help. So just going back to that edit page. Yeah, much easier to read now. So this is a title card, and for this, the content here, I just made it security, and you can put a specific theme on that, or it'll default to what you have for this specific dashboard, which for this, again, is that Noctis Grey. And then this is a custom alarm control panel card that I found on GitHub and was able to install through hacks to get this one to work. This one might have been a little bit more complex than most. Hacks is usually the easiest way to get things added that are a little bit more custom. Sometimes you have to dive a little bit deeper even into that. But most things on GitHub, they'll have some good installation instructions that walk you through that in a very straightforward way. So this one, I did also do some color coding here to make this specifically like Ring's branding color. And I had to make the scale a little bit different to make sense and fit for what we were doing specifically here. Underneath that, things get a little bit different because we've got some other rows of information here, and I will highlight some columns for you. So this number 3 is actually 6 different tiles, and these are Ring cameras that I have. And Ring, I'm kind of cheating a little bit in the way that I have this built out. And I'll explain what I mean here. So Ring natively doesn't integrate with Home Assistant very well, especially if you're wanting like a live view. So for these, I'm taking snapshots from each one of these cameras, and they update every couple of minutes, I would say. So if you try to do a live view, it does this weird, like almost like a speed up animation, and it doesn't feel very fluid. It doesn't feel very natural. But basically, I've got the overall vertical stack, and then number 3 on it is this group of 6 things in the middle. So why did I do it that way? Basically, I've built a stack within a stack, but it was an easy way to organize what's going on here. So I've got a horizontal stack built inside the vertical stack to make this side-by-side thing happen. I knew which way I wanted this organized. It's the same way I have it organized inside my Ring app. So there was logic to just following that same rationale here. Another reason why I'm with Ring is their app is great and it doesn't require a ton of expertise. You know, if this is something like, you know, my wife is not going to always interface with the Home Assistant dashboard. She wants to use the Ring app. So I wanted to have as much consistency between what those experiences would be. I'm more so going to be the one who's going to look at this on the dashboard in Home Assistant. So there's these pictures that update. But what I did specifically for this, you can have certain triggers happen, and I'm going to kind of show you, there's a URL basically that you can click. Every camera has its own unique URL path, and you're going to see some of it, but I'm not going to show you all of it here. So have fun going and trying to hack into my camera. If you were to click on it, it would prompt you for Ring credentials. So you're not going to be able to get to my live view. But basically, the workaround that I've had for getting a live view of the camera here is if you were to tap on this image, it would open up a new tab and basically take you out to Ring to see the live view in the browser. The wonky thing with this is your sessions only get cached, at least on the iPad, for like an hour. So you have to keep re-entering those login credentials to be able to get into Ring. I've cached them on the iPad so you can be able to get back in. But this is honestly something that I ended up using a ton. So it's super handy if I happen to be there at the iPad. For the most part, though, for live view, I'm still just going to the Ring app on my phone. But I like that this is at least an option. So as you can see, you've got this now horizontal, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 2 columns that are in this horizontal stack that's underneath the large vertical stack. So number 2 is the front yard snapshot. It's a camera that I have mounted on a tree in my front yard, pointed back at the house, attached to a solar panel. It's a Ring stick-up cam. And then I have this third one, which is here. This is the garage door. It's taking a snapshot of it. There's one inside the garage. 5th row, or 5th entity in here, is this guy right here. This is like the back door snapshot. And then the 6th one, is the shed. And each one of these, again, the tap action, which is super awesome, is I've just set that to a URL that points out to Ring's website for each one of these. So how did I go about finding that? If you go to ring.com and you pull up your cams, every cam has its own unique URL. All you need to do is go to the live view of that camera, go to your browser's address bar, and copy and paste. That's it. That URL is unique. And in the past year, that's been static. It's been consistent. That URL is what works to get to your camera. So that's how I've built that out. Number 4 here is a lighting control that's down here. This is the backyard light, is the first of the 2 horizontal stacks that I have for number 4 here. And this is a Ring light. So this is a zone that I have that's just the backyard lights. That is, again, in Ring. It controls 2 spotlight cams and a floodlight cam, and then a Ring floodlight as well. It just lights up my backyard. So I like being able to have that control and basically turn things on from here, which is something you can totally do. Because this isn't something where you have dimming controls, I didn't feel like we needed to have dimming controls on it. So we just didn't do that. Then there's also this landscaping light, and this is a TP-Link Casa outdoor smart plug. So again, same thing, no dimming controls. So I just have this set to turn on or turn off. This switch, which is an entity for landscaping lights. And I'll show you where that integration is here in just a second, just so you can see that. But then this Dayspedia URL, this is another one. This is just a demo. For me, on my production version of this, this is where I have a Google image, or it's a PNG, just a transparent background on it. That it says like, welcome to our home, scan this QR code to join our Wi-Fi network, or something like that. And there's a QR code that I have over here. So that was something I just built out in Photoshop. You could use really any image tool to generate that. I went and generated the QR code online with the ability to basically just jump on our network. So it's got like our network name and the network password. If you don't know how to do that, just Google QR code for joining a Wi-Fi network, and there's generators out there that'll generate a QR code for you. So that's what I did there. But yeah, kind of going back to settings for just a second, and devices and services, and the integration for TP-Link Casa was where I've got a whole bunch of different things that are in here, including the outdoor smart plug, which is this guy right here. He's got 2 ports on him. One of them is landscape lights. Another one is power to my porch there as well. So I've just got it labeled to turn on or turn off based on whatever those needs are. So landscape lights basically turns on or off. And inside of Casa, I have it scheduled to come on 30 minutes before sunset and then turn off at 11 o'clock at night. That's outside of the scope of the way I have that set up in Home Assistant. Maybe one day I'll get that in Home Assistant. I've also got some Alexa routines that if Ring detects motion in the middle of the night on one of the cameras, those lights turn on, they stay on for like 15 minutes, and they turn back off. All right, so getting back to the dashboard, just to kind of give you a view again of that third column. it is just more of that vertical stack. I've got vertical stacks, 7 different entities that are stacked on top of each other, and then there's some can't talk. There are some horizontal stacks that are inside of that. So we talked about the first one there, that title card, climate and doors. Number 2 is Ecobee. And these are the 2 thermostats that I have integrated. So those entities. And there are some really nice controls that recently have been refreshed in the look of Home Assistant that I really love. And you've got both of those in there. I did create a tap action for these as well. There is a third-party solution called BStat that gives you some really cool like smart controls there. So I think for these, I put it like a double tap action. So if you double tap, it opens up a new browser window that gives you some more information. It does default to whatever that last session was. So for this case, it was upstairs is the last thing that I checked on here. So it's going back and seeing the upstairs as kind of that first thing. So that's a little bit wonky, but just a fun thing that you can navigate through. Third column there is where I needed another spacer. I thought it made the most sense here as opposed to just have a dead, group a dead card with nothing on it at the bottom. Just have some sort of a separator between the climate controls, then starting to get into things like door controls. So I just put it there. Fourth there, those are those garage doors, which I can't wait to get updated. What I'll end up doing here is just pointing that entity towards the new Moros door controls for those 2 garage doors when that time comes. That's the nice thing. You can point these to whatever entity. It just happened to be that for me, the garage door are the things that made sense here. So that's what we ended up using. There are some different controls in here as far as the layout is concerned. And the default, I think, was a little bit different, but the height was just weird. And I wanted to have things as symmetrical as possible. That ended up throwing things off. So in this case, I went with the vertical layout. There's some options here for like fill container. I had it off for this one. You can change the icons. So there's some fun stuff that you can do there. But these are all mushroom cards. So like for this one, let's see, this was like maybe it was a garage. I'm trying to remember what we did. Maybe it's a lock. Yeah. So I used the lock card for this, and then I could assign it to a garage door. For these thermostat ones, that is, I think it's just called thermostat. No, that's not it. Tempered, let's see, template card maybe. Yeah. Now I'm questioning what those were. Let's see, if you go in here, mushroom climate card. So if you go in here, you can get all this information about more of like the code of what's happening behind the scenes, not just the GUI to make changes to it, but that was called a climate card. So yeah, if we were to just go in here and try to add something new, I could not remember that was called a climate card. I apologize. So we don't need a climate card, so we'll end up just canceling out of that. So we talked about the locks, which is basically 2 side-by-sides. So the way I went about that is you want to add a horizontal stack. So if you want to have 2 things that are side-by-side, you're going to add a horizontal stack. And then inside of that horizontal stack, you've got a new layer of controls. And basically, you're going to add a card there. So we'll just, for kicks and giggles, we'll just add another climate card. And it's going to put that down here at the bottom. And if you wanted to add something else side by side, essentially you're just going to do that again. So we'll just add another climate card there. And now you have at the bottom this side by side that we've just added brand spanking new to our stack there. So we're just going to delete those. We don't need that number 8. And now you can see we're back to just that view of what I have in production right now, or at least in this test view. A couple other things we talked about. There's doors. Underneath that, the next column, I've got, this is the entity for the front door and the controls that I have there. Again, another horizontal stack that is underneath the big vertical stack. And side by side with that, you can also, if you wanted to change the arrangement, this arrow will let you do that. As you can see here, front door's on the left, and then Rosie, which is our vacuums, on the right. If you wanted to change that order, you can do that. And you can also, for the stack, if I wanted to move that up to the top, it is now number 1. That's not where I want it. I want it underneath the garage doors in that 5th position, but you can adjust those positions there as well. So then number 2, that's Rosie the vacuum. There is a D-Bot integration that was a little bit more custom that I had to go through to get that. Honestly, I don't end up controlling this from Home Assistant very much. It's just nice to see when she's running. Then the couple of things here at the bottom, the weather map. This is just the current weather. You can have all different types of options there as far as what you want to show. But that is what I decided I wanted to show there, including humidity. You can change that to all different kinds of options, cloud cover, wind, all kinds of fun things. And then that 7th is the weather forecast for my local area. And there's some settings I had to make, some changes in the open weather to make that work there as well. This was a little bit more of a custom one. So there was some specific rules I had to put in place for that to work. But that is essentially high level how I built this dashboard. Vertical stacks and horizontal stacks. And basically that gives you complete granular control over where all of these different cards end up populating. And really the hack way that I went about making it all fit is those URL cards. And I didn't park too long on that, but I want to show you and point out aspect ratio is your best friend with that. So like this one here, this is this 3rd row of that horizontal stack. Aspect ratio, I just had to tinker and tinker and tinker with this until I came up with something that worked. So 18.1 by 1 is what you can do. You can do percentage points here, or you can do a number, colon, another number to come up with a ratio that makes the most sense. A lot of trial and error here, guys. I kind of got the framework of how I wanted everything built, and then I spent a ton of time on this, getting this to work. A ton of effort went into it. But guys, high level, that is how I built out the dashboard. Some other things you can do just to get things locked down. On the iPad itself, I'm using the Home Assistant app for iPad. I've got a view there where it's completely hiding this column, so there's some settings you can do there to do that. And then of course I've got the theme that's matched so that that header is aligned with what you would expect that to look like too. So, and then I've got the iPad in guided access mode, so it's locked down to the app. You have to do like a triple tap on the home button on it to get presented with a code that you can use to unlock it to get to other parts of the iPad. So I've got it locked down in that way as well. So high level, that is everything that it's taken to get this thing built out. And again, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to hit me up in the comments. I'll do my best to respond to you as well. And shout out to the Home Assistant user group on Facebook as well, where I put just a picture of my dashboard. Got a ton of questions there as well. I'll put a link to this video to all my peeps over there in the Home Assistant Facebook group as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. And if you haven't already, I'd ask you to consider liking and subscribing and hitting that bell notification so that you're always staying up to date with new content as it's uploaded. And we just talk about a lot of smart home stuff, and I review a lot of things, different products. So if you came to this video because of your interest in Home Assistant, tell me about that, and I would love to continue down this path, kind of talking through how I came up with some of the decisions that I made. And here's some feedback and ideas from you guys as well. So thanks again for joining, and I hope you guys have a good day.